We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for your attendance here today. The reason for being here today is to introduce the draft of our new CWD Response Plan. Now, this is a plan that staff, and not only our staff, but staff and subject matter experts from our conservation partners have been working very hard to get a plan together. And this is an important part of the process today too, because it begins the second component, which is the public involvement. So with no further ado, I will introduce the panelists. For media in attendance, you have a sheet in your press packet that has the names and titles of the panelists. Beginning at my far right with Lisa Murphy. Lisa is the Associate Professor of Toxicology at the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine, and she serves as the co-director of the Pennsylvania Wildlife Futures Program and resident director for the PATLS New Golden Center. Harold Dahl. Harold is the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen and Conservationists. Kevin Brightville is the State Veterinarian with the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. Then we have Nick Pimizzato. He's the President and CEO of the National Deer Alliance. Game Commission Executive Director Brian Burhans. Pennsylvania Game Commissioner Michael Mitrick. He represents District 6. He's from York. Game Commissioner Charlie Fox. He's from Troy. Represents Game Commission District 5. Courtney Colley is our CWD Communications Specialist. Jared Oyster is our CWD Coordinator. Christopher Rosenberry is the head of our Deer and Elk section. And Matthew Schnoop, who is the Director of our Bureau of Wildlife Management. So we'll kick things off today with some opening remarks from Executive Director Brian Burns.
First, I want to thank you for being here today. Today we are rolling out our proposed chronic wasting disease plan to ramp up our efforts to manage chronic wasting disease in Pennsylvania. Chronic wasting disease is truly an ecological disaster unfolding before our eyes. We have learned a lot from other states who have been dealing with chronic wasting disease for many, many years. And what we have learned is that although we can't eradicate chronic wasting disease, we can manage it to ensure healthy, stable deer populations into the future. But to do this, we need the support of our hunters. Our hunters are our front lines to dealing with this disease. Over the next 6 months, we will be traveling throughout the state to present information about CWD, the proposed response plan, and listen to hunter and citizen concerns and answer questions. Next spring, our staff will present a final response plan to our Board of Commissioners for approval so we can begin implementation of the plan in fall of 2020. The final plan will take into account what we receive from hunters, citizens, and legislators through our discussions throughout the state. We thank the many subject expert scientists across the country who have helped us develop this response plan. This is a very difficult disease to manage, but with the support of our expert scientists, many of whom are on stage here today, and our hunters and the citizens of Pennsylvania, we will be able to manage this disease. Next, I'd like to bring up Courtney.
Hello, everybody. Thank you again for being here today to talk about this serious threat to Pennsylvania's deer and elk herds. Chronic wasting disease is an always fatal brain disease that affects members of the deer family. Unfortunately, there is no vaccine or treatment for chronic wasting disease. CWD has a long incubation period, meaning that it takes a long time for symptoms to show. On average, a CWD-infected individual may not show symptoms for 18 to 24 months. This means that a healthy-looking deer, like the one on the left, can be infected with CWD, while a sick-looking deer, like the one on the right, may or may not be infected with CWD. The only way to tell if a deer is infected is to have a deer tested. And currently, there are no approved live tests for chronic wasting disease. CWD is believed to be caused by a defective protein called a prion. Prions accumulate in the central nervous system, causing tiny holes to form in the brain, eventually leading to death. Once deer begin to show signs of CWD, symptoms include a lower head and ears, excessive drooling, excessive thirst, excessive urination. Thinning or wasting, as the name implies, a rough hair coat, and also behavioral problems, such as listlessness, which means not wanting to move, and then also the lack of fear of humans. All of the videos that you see on this slide were from clinical suspects that tested positive for chronic wasting disease in the south central part of the state. Clinical suspects are just deer that show outward signs of disease. CWD prions can be spread through animal-to-animal contact or through prion-contaminated land. Infected deer can shed prions onto the landscape through saliva, urine, and feces. Once in the soil, prions can remain infectious for several years. Studies have shown that prions can withstand freezing and thawing, as well as temperatures reaching 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. So you're not cooking this out of your meat. While there have been no reported cases of chronic wasting disease in humans, experimental studies have shown that CWD can be transmitted to non-human primates. These studies raise concern that CWD may pose a potential threat to humans as well. In addition, chronic wasting disease is closely related to mad cow disease, which has been found to infect humans through consuming infected meat. For these reasons, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommend that no one knowingly consume meat from CWD-infected animals. In addition, the Game Commission recommends that anybody who harvests deer within CWD-positive areas get their deer tested prior to consuming. Hunters in Pennsylvania's disease management areas can get their deer tested free of charge by submitting heads and head collection containers provided by the Game Commission. CWD was first confirmed in a captive deer facility in Colorado in 1967. Since, CWD has spread and has been detected in 26 states, including Pennsylvania and 3 Canadian provinces. CWD was first detected in Pennsylvania in 2012 in a deer farm in Adams County. Shortly after, 3 wild positives were detected in Bedford and Blair counties. As a result, disease management areas 1 and 2 were created. Disease management areas are areas of land where chronic wasting disease has been found and where specific rules apply to prevent the spread of CWD. The Game Commission began testing for chronic wasting disease in 1998, more than 10 years before chronic wasting disease was found in the state. Since 1998, the Game Commission has tested nearly 80,000 wild deer for CWD and over 800 wild elk. These efforts aim to quickly detect new cases of chronic wasting disease within the state and to monitor the infection rate within CWD-positive areas. If you see something, please say something. Report sick-looking deer to your local regional office. Hunters who harvest deer in Pennsylvania's disease management areas can help detection efforts by submitting their deer head in a head collection container provided by the Game Commission for free testing. To increase detection efforts, the Game Commission has provided increased opportunities for hunters to harvest deer within Pennsylvania's disease management areas through the use of DMAP permits. Each DMAP permit allows hunters to harvest one additional antlerless deer within specific areas of Pennsylvania's disease management areas. In addition to monitoring the spread of CWD, the Pennsylvania Game Commission has established specific rules within disease management areas to help slow the spread of CWD. Within disease management areas, it is unlawful to feed wild deer or elk, to use or possess natural urine-based attractants in the field, and to transport high-risk parts outside of disease management areas. High-risk parts include the head, but more specifically, the brain, eyes, tonsils, and lymph nodes, as well as the spinal cord and spleen. These parts are considered high risk because prions concentrate in high densities in these locations. The importance of this regulation is to prevent people from dumping high-risk parts on the landscape in uninfected areas, possibly contaminating the soil in that area, or even exposing healthy deer or elk to the disease. However, despite all of these efforts, CWD continues to spread across the state every year. This map shows the evolution of Pennsylvania's disease management areas since 2012. When CWD is detected, either in wild or farm deer, a disease management area is created. Once again, within these areas, specific regulations apply to prevent the spread of CWD. As you can see, currently, Pennsylvania's disease management areas encompass over 8,000 square miles in the state. Like other diseases, CWD is not distributed evenly across Pennsylvania. CWD is a silent killer. It sneaks into an area and picks off one individual at a time, slowly growing right under your nose. And before you know it, 50% of your deer herd is infected. And what is worse is that once CWD is in the soil, it is near impossible to eradicate. This is most likely the bleak outlook for Bedford, Blair, and Fulton County, where over 90% of our CWD cases have been detected in Pennsylvania. And just like Disease Management Area 3 and Disease Management Area 4, Disease Management Area 2 started out with just a couple positives. With 3 wild deer testing positive in 2012, 2 in 2013, 5 in 2014, 12 in 2015, 25 in 2016, 79 in 2017, and 123 in 2018. This brings the total number of wild positives detected in Pennsylvania to 250. If this pattern continues, what can we expect later this year? 5 years from now, 10, 20, or even 50 years from now. Studies in other states show that CWD-infected deer are more likely to die annually than uninfected deer. And as a result, CWD can decrease deer populations over time. But all is not lost because we are seeing some success in other states. Methods to manage chronic wasting disease vary from state to state. This graph shows how different management methods affect the infection rate of CWD. West Virginia is a state that currently practices passive management. This means that no aggressive actions are taken to control CWD. West Virginia monitors the annual spread and infection rate within the state. As you can see, through passive management, West Virginia's infection rates have continually increased. Wisconsin and Illinois both detected chronic wasting disease within their borders in 2002. And both states implemented an aggressive management strategy that increased hunter harvest and used targeted removals, or sharpshooting, to reduce deer populations around known CWD positives. However, in 2007, due to public pushback, Wisconsin was forced to stop all target removals. As you can see from the graph, Wisconsin's infection rates have continually increased. Now let's talk about Illinois. Illinois has been able to keep a low infection rate since 2002 by consistently using an aggressive management strategy which used increased hunter harvest and target removals to reduce deer populations around known CWD positives. Since 2002, Illinois has been able to keep its infection rate at bay at about 2%. And as you can see here, Pennsylvania is following a similar trend as West Virginia or Wisconsin. However, Illinois is not our only success story. New York detected chronic wasting disease in both wild and farm deer in early 2005. In response, New York acted quickly, implementing an aggressive management strategy that used hunter harvest and target removals to reduce deer populations in the immediate area. New York has not detected any more cases of chronic wasting disease in the past 14 years. Similarly, Minnesota first detected chronic wasting disease in Olmsted County in 2010, only a few miles away from a positive farm. Minnesota acted quickly, implementing aggressive management strategies that used increased hunter harvest and target removals to reduce deer populations around these known positives. To date, Minnesota has not detected any more cases of chronic wasting disease in the local deer population. These success stories, along with experiences in other states, provide hope that aggressive management actions, including increased hunter harvest and target removals, if conducted quickly and effectively after a new CWD positive is detected, can be used to successfully combat CWD. To better understand how this works, we must first understand how CWD spreads through a population naturally. Just like people, an infected deer is more likely to infect their family, because these individuals live in close proximity to one another. In addition, infected deer have a higher probability of infecting deer whose home ranges overlap with theirs. A home range is basically an area where the deer travels on a daily basis. A great example of this for humans is where you would go on a daily basis. So this would include your home, work, or even the grocery store. So these circles represent a deer's home range. As you can see, the pattern continues, with CWD-infected deer first infecting the individuals closest to them, and then infecting deer that commonly encounter their home range. It's important to note that deer may travel outside of their home range for breeding or for juvenile dispersal. So while these deer have a lower probability in the upper left-hand corner of being infected, it is not impossible. Mimicking management methods taken in Illinois, New York, and Minnesota. What happens if we increase hunter harvest directly surrounding a new CWD positive? By lowering the deer population, we have lowered the chance that an infected deer will come in contact with a healthy deer, and in turn slow the spread of CWD. It is important to note that once a deer is infected, it could be shedding prions onto the landscape, creating another way for healthy deer to become infected. Therefore, this method is most effective if it is done quickly after discovery of a new positive. The Game Commission has drafted a response plan for CWD for 2020, which we are looking for public input. Management actions proposed in this draft response plan mimic actions taken in other states like Illinois, and strive to stabilize CWD infection rate and slow the spread of CWD within Pennsylvania. The Game Commission consulted various representatives from other state wildlife agencies, representatives from nonprofit organizations, and representatives from universities to create this draft plan. And now we would like your thoughts. To determine areas where these management actions will take place, a 3-mile radius circle will be drawn around each detected positive, as seen here. In areas with higher infection rates, these circles may overlap each other, creating one larger area, which we would call the established area. Within this area, CWD is most likely already established in the soil, hence the name, and therefore unlikely to be eradicated. Within the established area, the management goal will be to keep infection rate at or below 5%. Detections found outside the established area will be called control zones and will require additional management actions. Within this area, the management goal will be to prevent the establishment of CWD in these local areas. Increased hunting opportunities to manage chronic wasting disease will take place within these areas to slow the spread and stabilize the infection rate of chronic wasting disease. In each of these locations, population surveys will be conducted prior to hunting season to determine the local deer populations. The sampling goal or number of deer that need to be harvested will be determined based on these population surveys. On average, 350 deer will need to be harvested within each 3-mile radius to confidently detect chronic wasting disease at a 1% infection rate. To reach this goal, hunters collectively will need to harvest on average an additional 4 deer per square mile and submit all heads to head collection containers. In these areas, the Game Commission would like to increase hunting opportunities to help slow the spread and stabilize the infection rate of CWD. Options under consideration to increase hunter opportunities include increasing antlerless tag allocations, concurrent or extended hunting seasons, and the removal of antler-point restrictions. While antler-point restrictions are favored by many in the state, antler-point restrictions allow older bucks in the population, and adult bucks are 3 times more likely to be positive for CWD than any other deer. By removing antler-point restrictions, hunters are allowed to harvest more deer and in turn lower the CWD infection rate. Hunters are given the first opportunity to harvest deer in CWD-positive areas through antlerless tags called DMAP permits. DMAP permits can be used within the unit, only used within the unit for which they're issued, and each permit can be used to harvest 1 additional antlerless deer. Please help us monitor the spread of CWD in these areas by submitting heads for free testing in head collection containers provided by the Game Commission. These samples help monitor the infection rate and spatial distribution of disease around CWD positives and help guide future management actions. Here's a map of Pennsylvania's DMAP units. If and only if enough samples are not provided to determine the infection rate or spatial distribution of disease in a local area, will the Game Commission consider using target removals or sharpshooting to meet management goals. Target removals will only occur after the close of hunting seasons and only with landowner permission. If target removal is needed, USDA will use infrared technology to estimate the current population in the area. USDA will only harvest enough deer to meet management goals. To ensure a safe and effective shot, USDA may use baiting or suppressed rifles to harvest deer in these areas. All deer taken through target removals are tested for chronic wasting disease. And all meat from deer that tests positive will be properly disposed of. The remaining meat will be donated to cooperating landowners or to hunters sharing the harvest. And moving forward, we will continue to manage and protect Pennsylvania's birds and mammals with the best available science. At no time in history have diseases posed more problems to wildlife and conservation than now. White nose syndrome has killed 99% of most cave-dwelling bat species. The little brown bat, which used to be one of the most abundant bat species in Pennsylvania, has now been added to the endangered species list. Chronic wasting disease continues to spread to new parts of Pennsylvania every year, infecting and killing deer, and threatening the tradition of hunting. West Nile virus has left Pennsylvania state bird, the ruffed grouse, with an uncertain future. That is why the Pennsylvania Game Commission and the University of Pennsylvania has formed a partnership to address these problems head-on through the Pennsylvania Wildlife Futures Program. Dedicating 12 disease specialists to address wildlife diseases across the state, this new science-based wildlife health program serves to increase disease surveillance, management, and research to better protect our wildlife today and in the future. Over the next 6 months, we'll be sending surveys, both inside and outside of Pennsylvania's disease management areas, to gain a better understanding of the public knowledge of CWD and the support for, or lack of support for, management options proposed in the draft CWD Response Plan. In addition, the Game Commission will host public events or meetings to better inform the public about CWD and to ask for public comment on the draft response plan for 2020. The draft response plan will be available to read and for public comment on the Game Commission website at www.pgc.pa.gov. This draft response plan will be available to review and for comment until February 29th, 2020. All comments and data from surveys will be analyzed and used to guide future revisions for the final CWD response plan for 2020. The Game Commission will also continue to consult other state wildlife agencies, nonprofit organizations, and universities to make revisions to the draft response plan. Before we take questions and before we move on, the Game Commission would like to thank everybody for being here today. Your help is critical to controlling CWD. No matter who you are or where you live, you can help prevent the spread of CWD. Individuals living inside or outside of the disease management areas can help by practicing CWD regulations no matter where you are in the state. This includes not feeding wild deer or elk and not using natural urine-based attractants in the field. Hunters can help by limiting the movement of and properly disposing of high-risk parts. Hunters can also help by filling DMAP tags and submitting heads for testing. Landowners can help by opening access to land for hunters within Pennsylvania's disease management areas. And everyone can help by not only educating ourselves, but those around us. You can find updated information on chronic wasting disease on the Game Commission's website. Again, that is www.pgc.pa.gov. Together, we can control CWD. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. We want to bring up Commissioner Charlie Fox.
Thank you for being here. As a board of commissioners, our mission is to protect and manage the wildlife resources of the Commonwealth. With no greater threat than chronic waste disease for the future of our white-tailed deer population. 2 years ago, when we began to work with our partners, stakeholders, and hunters, to develop a plan to address this critical issue. Eradication of CWD is no longer an option. One must now focus on containment and control. This plan will place hunters at the forefront of this implementation of this plan. We recognize that public support is critical to the success of the plan. Given the importance of succeeding and the consequences of our failure, it is imperative that we all work together on this critical issue. The Board of Commissioners will lend its full support to the implementation of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Shuttle. We'd like to bring up Harold Dahl, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen and Conservationists.
Being a long-time shooter, I have some hearing impairment. Are you guys hearing this okay out there? Okay. It was really echoey back here. I am Harold Dahl, the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen and Conservationists, and I'd like to make a statement on behalf of my organization. The continuing expansion of chronic wasting disease threatens our white-tailed deer and elk herds. We need to face that fact. Hunting as we know it is in jeopardy due to this disease. Recent data indicate CWD prevalence continues to grow in disease management areas across Pennsylvania, as we just saw on the slides. CWD is a problem with few answers. While the cause has been scientifically identified, there exists no United States Department of Agriculture approved test for detection in any live mammal, especially any cervid like deer or elk. While research continues across the United States and in many countries abroad, there are no legitimate field test kits, vaccines, or cures on the horizon. We can and must learn from the other states who have successfully handled and managed CWD. Illinois, New York, and Minnesota were just shown on our slides. Conservation organizations like the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen and Conservationists that support scientific and biologically sound wildlife and habitat management are focusing on this issue. We stand firm that our wildlife managers follow science to ensure biologically sound wildlife and habitat management is practiced in Pennsylvania. We also are assisting and helping to educate both the public and political audience on how to best deal with CWD. We also must be supportive of and urge adequate funding for the appropriate agencies dealing with CWD. They must be fully funded if we expect them to perform optimum monitoring, reporting, and enforcement of regulations and laws. Hunters and the Pennsylvania Game Commission cannot fund this effort alone. Efforts at slowing the spread of CWD is the only productive response at this time. Science is predicting with great accuracy the path we are on. It is time for all of us to support our scientists and biologists as they attempt to slow the spread of this disease. The Pennsylvania legislature can help by taking the necessary actions to provide funding as needed. It is only through the combined efforts of the Pennsylvania sportsmen, wildlife enthusiasts, the Pennsylvania Game Commission, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, legislators, and other stakeholders that we may identify the permanent solution to chronic wasting disease here in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. And finally, Nick Pinizzotto of the National Deer Alliance.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see everyone here this morning. My name is Nick Pinizzotto. I'm the President and CEO of the National Deer Alliance. Founded in 2015, the National Deer Alliance mission is to serve as the guardian of wild deer conservation and our hunting heritage. Our work on behalf of deer hunters, and the hunting industry is policy focused, and our current priority areas include wild deer conservation, diseases, hunter access, and state and federal land management. We work on issues that impact North American deer species, on all North American deer species, and are backed by an impressive board of directors with members representing national deer organizations, university researchers, the states through the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, and the hunting industry. While our organization was created for the purpose of working on all matters that impact deer, deer hunters in the hunting industry, the staff and board of directors quickly realized that there's no more important matter right now than chronic wasting disease. In fact, about 90% of all of our work right now is focused on CWD, and I can still vividly remember when the National Deer Alliance started, we listed 6 or 7 of these great things we wanted to do on behalf of deer, and now unfortunately those have to be on the sideline when we work on CWD. In addition to my oversight of the National Deer Alliance, I also happen to be a Pennsylvania sportsman. I spent most of my life here in Pennsylvania, was raised in the Keystone State, and it's where my own personal passion for deer and hunting was cultivated. So I'm uniquely positioned and understand the situation, the CWD situation here. I live right on the edge of Disease Management Area 3 in Indiana County. So it's very real for me as well as a sportsman. CWD is a very real threat to deer and our deer hunting traditions across the country. It's an issue, frankly, that nobody wants to deal with. I can promise you that nobody sitting here on stage when we got into working with deer wouldn't be standing up here talking about CWD. But unfortunately, those are the cards we've been dealt. The National Deer Alliance supports the Pennsylvania Commission's efforts to control CWD. We also recognize that there are some people that I think what people are really upset about is they're upset about the disease. And it's unfortunate because nobody, as I said, wants to deal with this, and therefore the realities of dealing with it seem very far-fetched and unbelievable by many. And that's a challenge we face, is trying to get sportsmen to embrace what we're trying to do here, because while we support the efforts of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, we're also very supportive of sportsmen leading the way on this charge. Sportsmen came to the table and saved deer and other wildlife in the past. We think we can do it again, and we look very favorably on the effort to do so here in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. With that, we'll move on to the Q&A portion of our press conference. Now, for our panelists, we will need to answer questions from the podium. So Courtney and Jared, maybe you could just come right here, and I'll walk around with the question. And then if there are any questions for any of the other panelists, maybe you could just assist me getting them. Questions? Yes, sir.
I have a question about the mechanics of how this would work in terms of giving hunters more opportunities. When will these surveys be done? And you allocate no licenses in April. The surveys come after that, and then you'll decide in late summer, fall, if there are more licenses available, or how that works.
I mean, surveys, you're talking about like estimating the deer population
Yes.
of surveys? Okay. So those will be done before the hunting season, and then, and it kind of depends which area we're talking about. As we talked about before, there's an established area where there'll be a slightly different management strategy than there will be in the control units. So I'll start in the control units. So what we would do there is we would meet with landowners before the hunting season and get them to know all these regulations, all these management objectives. And like I said, the first step of management is to collect a certain number of samples, which is in most areas about 350 deer. That would give us about 99% confidence that we would be able to detect CWD with that 1% prevalence. So that would be the first step with, and just increase the DMAP tags essentially is how we would do that before the hunting season, increasing those tags. And so if hunters aren't, for some reason, are not able to reach that management goal of 350 deer within that control unit, then target removals will be used after the season is over to collect that sample. And in the established area, again, it would be also just increase DMAP units, DMAP tags. And the objective there, again, is to keep the prevalence below 5%. The only way to do that with current science is to reduce deer populations around them in small local areas around those positives.
Okay, so now maybe I'm confused. So if there's, let's say, a state game land within, whether it's the established area or the containment area, will you be doing surveys on the game lands as well? And we have DMAP tags for game land, or is it just private properties around sort of a positive?
And so in the established area, there won't be a need for surveys on a large scale. Like there'll be several counties in the but in the control units, it would be It's a pretty small area, it's a 3-mile radius, so it's about 28 square miles, you do the math, and so it would be all the lands in there. You do those, it'd be a road-based deer survey, so you have these infrared cameras at night, that's how you detect the deer, and then you get an estimate there. And that's the number of samples that would need to be collected to be confident you know the extent of the disease we face with that deer density.
Okay, my other question is, this obviously potentially involves a lot of sacrifice for hunters in terms of lower deer numbers, elimination of animal restrictions, which are very popular. The concern a lot of hunters say is, okay, we do all these things, and a deer escapes from a captive farm, or a deer on a truck gets moved from one farm to another. So what kind of things does the deer, captive deer industry, how are they potentially sacrificed here, and what's their part of this plan?
I'll let Kevin respond to that.
Good morning. As previously introduced, I'm Dr. Brayko, I'm the state veterinarian. In 2012, we established the quarantine order for CWD. We have a total of roughly 800 farms right now enrolled in the program. And much like this targeted strategy that Gabe's talking about now, we've been implementing it for years. So these facilities are all required to test. And upon testing, if they're detected positive, they have two options. One is to slowly depopulate and ride out the 5 years, and the other is to accept the federal indemnity and depopulate. And we are working with a couple of herds right now on that exact situation. So I really think that the strategy that we're implementing and Gabe implementing are very similar when we look at control zones, and that's, I hope that answered your question.
Okay, I guess one follow-up would be the other concern that hunters have is this indemnity fund that you mentioned. From what I understand, that's limited, that there's not always money for every time there's a farm that's depopulated, or it takes years. So the concern hunters have is, well, if a guy on the farm finds out that I have sick deer and this is going to put me out of business, if I tell him, they just kind of turn that deer loose. Is there any kind of monitoring that goes on? Like every farm they have X number of animals, and which ones, if they die or they disappear, where they go?
Yeah, so we have 22,000, a little over 22,000 deer right now. Roughly 200 of those farms are the HCP programs, and the other 600 would be the HMPs. The HCPs have exact inventories. The HMPs do have estimated inventories. However, any reports at either of those facilities have to be reported in 48 hours to us, and they're handled appropriately. The testing it's pretty hard to evade testing strategy. If you're a certified herd, every deer that dies every 12 months has to be tested, and that's verified at the end of the year. Correspondingly with our high fence hunting preserves, 50% of those have to be tested, and that's fairly easily checked as we submit in the annual inventories and review them to make sure that, if there was 20 hunts hosted, that there were 10 accessions at our laboratory that show that the deer tested negative. In regards to indemnity funding is a federal program. Keep in mind that those 200 herds that are in the certified program are able to move across state lines through the federal program, and that's where the funding comes from. Over the past 3.5 years, we've been very fortunate to receive the lion's share of indemnity depopulation payments to our state versus others. So we have worked very, very hard whenever a facility comes up positive to work with both the landowner, USDA, and other agencies to make sure we mitigate this risk.
One last question. Harold Dahl mentioned that we need everybody to contribute to this. Does the Game Commission get any general fund money for CWD or this plan, or is it all you?
Currently, all the expenses for our CWD management efforts and our partnership with Penn Vet and our Wildlife Futures program is being borne by the Legislative Game Commission. There's currently no tax dollars that are being funded into that.
Other questions?
It's just a clarification. Is there a difference between targeted rural and sharpshooters?
No, there's no difference. I think people just understand the word sharpshooting rule better than targeted removals. I guess targeted removals is maybe a better description because we're not shooting in a large area, it's not widespread, it's a very small area. For example, like I said, in a 3-mile radius area, that's what targeted removals is. And sharpshooters would just be obviously the people that do the targeted removals.
Anybody else?
One thing that I would like to add is we will have the response plan live on our website today if it's not there already, and there's a landing page there. In your press packets, there is a copy of the public comment form that we've created, and whatever you can do to help us get the word out about the form will be helpful. Of course, we'll accept comments in any manner we receive them, but that form will enable us to much more easily categorize the comments in considering public input moving forward on this draft plan. Any other questions?